Yeah. Young man, always surfing, no waves.
Beginnings are important, and Genesis, the first book in the Bible, is the beginning of everything. It covers over 2,000 years of history, more time than any other book in the Bible, and is full of so many amazing stories like Noah and the flood, and Joseph and his colorful coat. But today we start with the story of the first man and woman ever created. Their names were Adam and Eve. This is the opening scene of history, and it matters to you. Deep in what we know as the Middle East today, Adam and Eve lived in a beautiful garden God created for them called Eden. Eden was quite simply paradise. They had everything they needed, and most importantly, they walked and talked directly with God. There were many different trees in the garden, but there was one tree in the middle of the garden that was forbidden to eat from. One day, while Eve was taking a walk in the garden, a serpent found Eve and spoke to her about this tree. Eve fell into the serpent's trick and ate the fruit, even giving Adam a taste. Then Adam and Eve's eyes were opened to both good and evil, and they ran away from God in shame. God found them hiding from him and asked, "Have you eaten from the tree I commanded you not to eat from?" This was the birth of sin on earth. But Genesis covers so much more than Adam and Eve. It's full of stories about God rescuing his people. Joseph was rescued from prison, Noah and his entire family protected from the flood, and so much more. In Genesis, God continues to show that he has an amazing plan for each and every one of his people. From the beginning of time, God has had a plan to deliver his people from the sin that separates us from him. There is a rescuer coming as we begin this epic journey through the greatest story ever told.
Well, welcome to the Daily Snack. Man, I love watching people do artwork like that. I hope you enjoyed that. It's so far beyond anything that I could ever do. I'm always just amazed to see people do what they can do with just a simple instrument. I mean, I have a tablet, but I can't do that on that tablet. So hope you enjoyed the story. Hope you really enjoyed the artwork. Now, here at the Daily Snack all week long, if you haven't seen the past episodes, go back, check them out. We've been looking at the opening scene to the greatest story ever told. And we've been seeing this big point that we all need to be rescued. And God has a plan. And that story that you just heard actually is a continuation of that opening scene in the Bible. Now, today, I thought what would be cool is to actually write a story together and see if we can get anywhere close to being the greatest story ever told. We're going to do something called a Mad Lib. And what a Mad Lib is, if you haven't done one before, is it's a story with a whole bunch of blanks in it. And what you do is you ask people questions beforehand. You don't tell them what the story's about. You just ask them questions. Give me a noun, give me a verb. You get that list, and then you plug that into the story. And I did that on Saturday morning. We have a live kids' church experience happening at the building for a small group of kids. We're capped at 24 kids, and we have masks, and we stay distant. We follow all the guidelines, so it is absolutely as safe as can possibly be. And I asked them to participate. So I didn't tell them the story. I actually didn't read it for them. At the end, I told them they had to check out the Daily Snack to find it. But they gave me some of the words. So here, I looked for 7 things in this story. I needed the name of a fake country, the vegetable, a number, an adjective, which is a word that describes a thing, an animal, a food, and a part of the body. And I've plugged those into the story, and I am now ready to share with you what could possibly be, even better than the Bible, the greatest story ever told. Here we go. Check it out. Once upon a time, in a land called Wineberry, there lived a curious person whose house was made of potato. High on the hill, the house looked over the whole valley to the town below. It was the year 1000, and no one had ever seen the ugly person who lived there. Some say they had a pet cheetah, and others thought the owner of the house was a millionaire who never needed to leave and simply had all the tomatoes they could eat delivered to their door. One day, a brave villager climbed the hill to find out once and for all who lived there. Knock, knock. Anyone home? The door slowly creaked open, and a tiny, eyeball appeared in the doorway. The brave villager didn't notice the tiny ant-sized person who answered the door, so turned around and went back to town without ever knowing who lived there. The end. Well, I mean, together with some of the kids in kids' church, we did make up a great Once Upon a Time story. But alas, after reading it, I don't think it was the greatest story ever told. In fact, it might be one of the worst stories ever told. A house made of potato? A millionaire who just eats tomatoes? I mean, what are you gonna do? And that's what really is so different about the Bible. This is not a once upon a time made up kind of story. It's not a fairy tale. The Bible is not just a book. It's the greatest story ever told because it's true. It's God's story and it's our story because it's a story that will change our lives. We actually are in the story. We are characters in the greatest story ever told. And as we unpack this week in, week out, I'm going to share with you how you are actually in that story. You are a character in the greatest story ever told. And that brings me to where I want to leave us today, and that is with our third point. You know, we've talked this week about how this isn't just a book, right? This is real. This is true. And we've talked about the Great Escape, how we are in need of rescue, and God has a plan for that rescue. We need to escape our sin, the consequences of our sin, and God has a plan for that. But let's talk real quick before I leave about in the beginning. You know, some of the greatest stories begin with famous first words. One of my favorite books is The Hobbit by a guy named J.R.R. Tolkien. He had a lot of names, apparently. And the first words of that book are this: "In a hole in the ground, there lived a hobbit." Oh, famous and wonderful beginning to that book. Another one of my favorite books, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by a guy named C.S. Lewis, starts with, "Once there were 4 children, whose names were Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy." Another wonderful beginning to a spectacular series of books. But nothing grabs the imagination more than in the beginning, the first lines of Genesis, which is the first book of the Bible. It's not just the beginning of an amazing story, it's the beginning, the origins of everything. We all want to know what it was like before the world started, and the Bible reveals that to us. When you read a book, it's all about the main character, their highs, their lows, what they're experiencing, their troubles. But the Bible is different. It's about so much more. When we read the Bible, we look for the big picture. We look for God in each story so that we can learn more about Him and who He is and how He created us and all those kind of things. There are fascinating people in the Bible. Moses, Abraham, Noah, Joshua, Paul, Peter, all kinds of people. But there's only one story, and the whole story is all about God. And it's the greatest story ever told. Well, we've reached the end of our time together, but I hope you join us back tomorrow, because tomorrow it's all about club dance. We'll celebrate surviving another week of Zoom school and just throw off our cares, have a good time. We'll dance a little, sing a little, sweat a little bit maybe, and we'll just unload all our cares on the floor of club dance. I can't wait to see you tomorrow. Bye-bye, guys.
Young man, always surfing, no waves. I do it for the kids.
All for the youngest. Young man, always surfing, no waves. I do it for the kids.
They wanna know who I do it for. I do it all, I do it all, do it for the kids.
They wanna know who I do it for.